The morning my father sent me a message saying, "Plans changed. You and the twins aren't coming on the family cruise. Your sister wants only real family there." I stared at the screen thinking I had misunderstood. My daughters had spent months counting down the days. They had packed their little suitcases, chosen matching outfits, and dreamed about seeing the ocean together. But my father's decision was about to cost him far more than a vacation. Because before that cruise ship ever left the harbor, one choice he made would destroy the family image he had protected for years. And by the end of that same day, everything he owned would begin falling apart. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, and I live in Colorado with my twin daughters, Lily and Grace, who had just turned 7. For most of my life, I believed family meant showing up for each other no matter what. I believed grandparents were supposed to be the people who spoiled their grandchildren, made them feel special, and created memories they would carry forever. That was what I thought my father wanted too. From the outside, my family looked perfect. My father, Richard, was the kind of man everyone in our hometown respected. He owned a successful construction company, knew everyone's name, and was always talking about the importance of family values. Whenever relatives gathered, he would proudly tell people how much he loved being a grandfather. And my daughters adore him. They kept pictures of him on their bedroom shelves. They would get excited every time his name appeared on my phone. To them, Grandpa was the person who brought candy after dinner and told funny stories from when he was young. That was why the family cruise meant so much to them. My father had planned a huge vacation for everyone. He called it a once-in-a-lifetime family adventure. My sister Rachel, her husband, their children, my parents, and my daughters were all supposed to spend a week together on a beautiful cruise ship. For months, Lily and Grace talked about nothing else. They picked out matching dresses. They practiced saying words in different languages because they thought they would meet people from around the world. They even made little drawings of all of us standing together on the ship. I watched their excitement and smiled because I thought, finally, my daughters were going to have one of those magical childhood memories. But everything changed one ordinary morning. I was sitting at my kitchen table drinking coffee when my phone buzzed. I looked down and saw a message from my father. At first, I thought it was about travel details. Instead, I read the words that made my entire body go cold. Plans changed. You and the twins aren't coming. Rachel wants only real family on the cruise. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. Only real family. Those 4 words hurt more than I expected, because my daughters weren't strangers. They were his grandchildren. And in that moment, I realized my father had made his choice. He had chosen to leave us behind. But what he didn't know was that I was about to make a choice of my own. For years, I tried convincing myself that my father's decision was just one bad moment. I wanted to believe there was some explanation I didn't understand. Maybe he had been pressured. Maybe Rachel had said something that changed his mind. Maybe he would realize how much he had hurt Lily and Grace and call me to apologize. But deep down, I already knew the truth. This wasn't new. The cruise was just the first time he had made his favoritism impossible to ignore. Growing up, I always felt like I was competing for a place in my own family. My younger sister Rachel was the one everyone celebrated. She was the daughter my father proudly showed off at every gathering. When she achieved something, he would tell the entire town. When I achieved something, he would simply say, "That's nice." I spent years trying harder, hoping that one day he would look at me the way he looked at her. When I graduated college, I worked 2 jobs because I wanted to prove I could build something on my own. When Rachel needed help starting her business, my father gave her money without hesitation. He called it an investment. When I needed help after my divorce, he told me adults had to learn to stand on their own. I accepted it because I loved him. I kept telling myself that parents were human. They made mistakes. They had favorites sometimes. But becoming a mother changed the way I saw everything. The moment I looked into Lily and Grace's eyes, I realized something. A child should never have to beg someone to love them. And yet, I was watching my father make my daughters feel exactly the way I had felt my entire life. What hurt even more was knowing how much I had done for him. After my mother passed away, my father struggled to keep his business organized. I was the one who helped him manage bills, paperwork, and finances. When the family house started becoming too expensive to maintain, I quietly stepped in. Every month, I helped cover payments. I never told anyone because I didn't want praise. I did it because I believed family helped family. But apparently, that belief only worked when I was the one giving. The morning after his message, I opened my bank records and looked at everything I had paid over the years. The mortgage, the utilities, the repairs. I finally saw the truth clearly. My father thought he could remove me and my daughters from his real family while still keeping the support I provided. He had no idea that the person he pushed away was the same person holding everything together. And when I decided to stop, his perfect family image would not survive. For the first time in my life, I stopped asking myself what my father would think. That might sound simple, but for someone who spent years trying to earn a parent's approval, it felt like breaking a chain I had carried since childhood. I looked at my daughters playing in the living room, laughing as they packed their little cruise outfits back into their closets, and I knew I had to make a decision. I could either teach them that love meant accepting rejection from people who were supposed to protect them, or I could show them that they deserved better. That afternoon, I sat down at my computer and started reviewing every payment I had made for my father's house. At first, I felt angry. Then I felt hurt. Then I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Clarity. The house everyone called my father's home was not standing because of him alone. For years, I had been quietly keeping it alive. I paid the repairs after storms damaged the roof. I covered several months of mortgage payments when his business had a difficult season. I handled bills that he ignored because I believed I was helping my family. But the same man who accepted my help without question had decided my daughters were not real family when it came time for vacation. That was the moment I understood something. Sometimes people only recognize your value after they lose access to it. I contacted the necessary people, reviewed the legal documents, and made arrangements to remove myself from responsibilities that were never truly appreciated. I didn't do it to punish him. I did it because I finally understood that protecting my children mattered more than protecting someone's feelings. That evening, I sat with Lily and Grace on their bedroom floor. I didn't tell them every painful detail because they were still children. They didn't need to carry adult problems. I simply told them that sometimes people make choices that hurt us, but we always have the power to choose what happens next. Lily looked at me and asked, "Does Grandpa not want us anymore?" That question broke my heart. I took a deep breath and told her, "Sweetheart, someone's choice does not decide your worth. You are loved more than you know." The next morning, I packed our things. While my father and Rachel prepared for their perfect family cruise, I was preparing for a different kind of journey. A journey where my daughters and I would finally stop chasing a place at someone else's table. And what happened next was something none of them saw coming. For the first time in years, I stopped looking back. I packed our bags, loaded the car, and left town with Lily and Grace before my father's cruise even began. I didn't leave with anger. I didn't leave with a plan to hurt anyone. I left because I finally understood that my daughters deserved a life where they never had to wonder if they belonged. As we drove away, I watched the familiar streets disappear behind us. The same streets where I had spent years trying to prove I was enough. The same town where my father had built an image of himself as a perfect family man. But now that image was beginning to crack. At first, nobody noticed anything. My father, Rachel, and the rest of the family boarded the cruise ship believing they had won. They posted pictures, smiled for cameras, and shared updates about their special family vacation. To everyone watching from the outside, they looked happy. But back home, reality was waiting. 2 days after I left, my father received a call from the bank. There was a problem with the house payments. He assumed it was a simple mistake. He told them to check again because, according to him, everything was handled. But it wasn't. For the first time in years, the bills that I had quietly managed were now his responsibility. The repairs, the payments, the expenses he never noticed because someone else was always there to handle them, all of it was suddenly visible. And that was when panic started. My phone began lighting up. First it was my father, then Rachel, then other relatives asking why I wasn't answering. I ignored the messages because I knew exactly what was happening. They weren't calling because they finally understood my pain. They were calling because they had discovered the person they pushed away was the person they depended on. Meanwhile, on the cruise ship, my father was still trying to act like everything was normal. But the life he had carefully built was falling apart faster than he could hide it. The house wasn't just a building. It represented years of choices, and now those choices were coming back to him. By the time the cruise reached its next destination, my father had already left dozens of messages. I looked at my phone and saw the number of missed calls growing, but I wasn't ready to answer. Because for once, I needed him to understand what it felt like when someone you trusted simply walked away. By the time I finally looked at my phone again, the screen was filled with notifications. 43 missed calls. Most of them were from my father. For a moment, I just stared at his name. The same name that once made me feel like I had to prove myself. The same name that my daughters used to say with excitement. But now, seeing it on my screen felt different. I answered the call. There was silence on the other end. Then I heard my father's voice. Not the confident voice he used when he was telling everyone how successful he was. Not the proud voice he used when he wanted people to admire him. This time, he sounded worried. He asked if we could talk. I listened as he finally admitted what he had refused to see for years. He said he didn't realize how much I had done. He said he thought I would always be there. And that sentence told me everything. He didn't miss me because he suddenly understood my value. He missed the convenience of having me around. I told him calmly that I wasn't trying to destroy his life. I was simply no longer willing to sacrifice mine to protect someone who had no problem hurting me. I reminded him of the cruise message. I reminded him of the words, real family. And I told him that family is not something you remove when it becomes inconvenient. Family is something you protect. There was a long silence. For the first time, my father had no argument, no excuse, no explanation, just silence. That day, I learned something I wish I had understood years earlier. Sometimes the people who hurt you are not angry because you left. They are angry because they finally have to live without everything you provided. My daughters never went on that cruise. But they gained something far more important. They learned that their worth was never decided by someone else's invitation. And I finally learned that choosing peace is not abandoning your family. Sometimes it is choosing yourself. After that phone call with my father, I expected to feel angry. I expected to feel satisfaction knowing that he finally understood what he had lost. But, strangely, I didn't. What I felt was peace. For years, I carried the weight of trying to make someone see my worth. I kept hoping that one day my father would look at me and realize I was never the problem. But that day, I understood something important. I didn't need his approval anymore. A few weeks later, Lily and Grace asked me if Grandpa would ever be part of our lives again. I looked at their innocent faces and realized how much I had changed. The old Emily would have made excuses. She would have tried to protect my father's image. She would have told my daughters that everything was okay even when it wasn't. But the new Emily knew that protecting children sometimes means telling them the truth in a way they can understand. I told them that some people love us in the way they know how, but that doesn't always mean they make the right choices. And I told them something I wanted them to remember forever. Being family is not just sharing the same last name. It's showing up. It's caring. It's making people feel safe. Months passed, and life slowly became calmer. My daughters stopped asking about the cruise. They started talking about other things instead. School projects, friends, their dreams. They laughed more. And honestly, so did I. I still think about that message sometimes. The one that broke my heart. But now, I see it differently. My father thought he was cutting us out of his family. What he didn't realize was that he was giving us the freedom to build one where we never had to wonder if we belonged. Because the strongest families are not always the ones we are born into. They're the ones who choose us every single day. A year after that cruise, I found myself standing on a beach with Lily and Grace, watching them run toward the waves with the biggest smiles on their faces. And for a moment, I thought about how different things could have been. My daughters could have spent that year believing they were not wanted. They could have carried the same questions I carried as a child. Why wasn't I enough? Why did someone choose someone else over me? But I made a promise to them that I would never allow those questions to define their lives. I realized that my father had given me a painful lesson, but not the one he intended. He wanted to teach me that people could be replaced. Instead, he taught me that I could survive without chasing people who refused to value me. A few months after everything happened, my father sent me one final letter. He wrote that he missed the old days. He wrote that he wished things had gone differently. He wrote that he finally understood how much I had done for him. I read the letter several times, and then I placed it in a drawer. Not because I hated him, because I had already made peace with the fact that some apologies arrived too late to rebuild what was broken. Forgiveness did not mean pretending nothing happened. It meant releasing myself from the pain he caused. Today, when I look at my daughters, I don't see the children my father rejected. I see two incredible girls who know they are loved. I see the reason I finally stopped accepting less than I deserved. And if there is one thing I hope people remember from my story, it is this. Never allow someone else's rejection to convince you that you are unworthy. The people who truly belong in your life will never make you fight for a place in their heart. Real family is not about who shares your blood. It is about who shows up, who protects you, and who chooses you, even when choosing you is not the easiest thing to do. And that is the family my daughters and I built. A family where nobody has to beg to belong.